The theme for this talk really is thinking about how can Android empower you, the developer, to enable your app to help users get things done. And on the team, we really think a lot about how to give your app superpowers so you can help users throughout the operating system, even when users aren't necessarily in the full screen experience of your app. For this talk, we'll focus on three major areas that you can take advantage of in Android Q. The first is with sharing. Next, we'll talk a little bit about notifications. And finally, we'll discuss new details around multitasking. So in Android Q, we're excited to have launched our redesigned share sheet experience. And there's a number of improvements that we've made for improving users' experience. So the first is around much improved performance through a new API that we've introduced that we're going to talk about in a little more detail. We've also actually updated the user experience to make it simpler for users to figure out where they can share their content to. So the share sheet is now going to be organized into three sections. The first is going to clarify what is the content that users can share to, and we'll provide a default experience of what that looks like. But you as a developer can also provide additional metadata to provide a richer preview. Next up are our direct sharing shortcuts, where you can share within apps. And then finally are the app targets, which have been split into two sections, some which are suggested by the operating system, and then finally the full alphabetical list. And you'll see that it's a very familiar interface to our launcher. We've also included a lot of new developer customization options because we understand that a lot of developers need to tailor their share sheet for various use cases, and we want to enable and empower developers to do so. So one area that I want to highlight in particular is the Sharing Shortcuts API. And really, the goal of the Sharing Shortcuts API is to allow users to share more directly within your apps. These sit above the app targets that users can share to, and they can include targets like a close friend that you are in contact frequently with, or an important work folder. Because of the performance benefit that they provide users, we're going to actually rank these ahead of the old chooser targets. And so we encourage your adoption so users can take advantage of these in the API. Switching gears now into notifications. One thing that we looked at the start of this release is we found that 75% of our users get at least one buzzing notification or noise-making notification every hour, and 15% of users get these every 10 waking minutes. So we thought, how can we help users manage this overload? And so we're introducing the concept of gentle notifications in Q. And really, the goal of gentle notifications is to help organize those important and valuable notifications that users want to consume, but that aren't time sensitive, and that they can consume on whatever their own schedule is. And so the story is for developers that you still set the priority as you normally would. Users can still adjust that priority, but now the system will also help adjust that priority on behalf of users. And this will mainly target notifications that are set with the default priority. In AOSP and in Q, the system will use a heuristic model, but we also will be incorporating on-device machine learning to make this a better experience. Having organized notifications, the next step is to make them even richer and more useful to users. And so the way that we're tackling this problem is by enhancing these notifications with suggested actions. There are two use cases that we're targeting for this. The first is by suggesting responses for users to reply to with messages, as well as providing access to actions that are related to the content of the notification. So now messaging notifications on Android will contain actions to navigate to an address that maybe your friend mentioned for a restaurant to meet up at, or to open a URL that your friend wants to check out. Finally, we're really excited to be announcing the Bubbles API, which is a new multitasking feature for users. This allows users to keep track of their most important tasks and be able to access them at any time, anywhere in the operating system. How this will work is users will have a floating icon. They can drag it anywhere that is useful to them, and then they can tap to expand it to get the full custom app UI. We're prioritizing communication tasks as those that can bubble from a notification because these are often the most important tasks to a user on their phone, while also users will be able to pin the task from within your full screen app for other use cases. And I think it's really useful to review how this sits alongside our other multitasking features, namely picture-in-picture. The big difference between these features is that really what picture-in-picture is meant to do is provide users with a path to visually monitor an important task. And it's meant to be a low interaction feature. You're something that you keep alongside you so that you can watch while you're performing some primary task. So you can watch whether a video going on or some directions that you're following. With bubbles, the goal is to help users get to another task as quickly as possible. And they're often high interactive UIs. So that's where a friend has messaged you and you want to get back to them quickly, and you really want to do so with the full fidelity of the messaging app that you're using. So you'll expand the bubble inline without losing your current context, and then message to your friend and go back to what you were previously doing. We hope that this suite of multitasking features unlocks a number of new capabilities that your apps can take advantage of and create great new user experiences. So now I'm going to hand it over to Mike to talk a little bit more about how you can take advantage of sharing features.
So we've made some big changes to the way that Share Sheet works in Android Q. Let's hit the details that matter most to you. We know folks like sharing straight to the person they want to over the app they want with a single tap. Who doesn't? We're shooting to make this experience even better. So now we'll show up to 8 deep linked targets. But we know that loading chooser targets from every installed chooser target service on a user's phone can be a little slow. So to make loading deep link targets faster, we need a new architecture. So in Q, we're extending the Shortcuts API to do just that. Publish a dynamic shortcut, and Android will load and rank much faster than we could with Direct Share. Previously, we would only consider 2 chooser targets per chooser target service. And now we'll consider all of the sharing shortcuts that you provide instead of just those 2. As an added bonus, because you're publishing shortcuts, those published targets may also appear if you long press your app in Launcher. To give users the best sharing experience we can offer, sharing shortcuts will supersede chooser target service. We've made it so that sharing shortcuts will be ranked above all targets provided by any chooser target service on a user's phone. So if you want your targets to be seen on Q+ devices, please update your app. And we've made that relatively easy through Android X. Implement sharing shortcuts with Android X, and you can get a back-compat chooser target service for older devices with a tiny amount of extra effort. The new API to do this is pretty straightforward. Make and publish a dynamic shortcut like you would normally, with the addition of the required category field and the highly encouraged person field. Adding a well-formatted person object to this and relevant notifications your app pushes can help improve your ranking. So for your own sake, please do so. Sharing shortcuts must be associated with an activity that has a category matching your shortcut category, and that activity must have an action send intent filter, which you'd have already if this activity appears in the share sheet. If you want Android X to automatically generate a back-compat chooser target service for you, you'll need to include extra metadata under that activity in the manifest. Documentation on how to do this is available now. Sometimes when you hit the share button, it's not exactly clear what you're sharing. We know this is a problem. And so to help with that, we've added a system-generated preview for several different MIME types. It's now way easier to copy text. In some cases, though, even seeing the exact text of the thing you're about to share is hard to understand. Think a long, complicated URL or a really messy URI. In these cases, a rich preview can provide your users real reassurance of what they're about to send. So for text previews specifically, you can add a thumbnail and description to provide your users that context. Pull this off with clip data and extra title. Let me show you how. Make a sharing intent, as you would normally, then add rich preview metadata to your share intent before calling create chooser. Stuff the description and extra title, and add the thumbnail to clip data. As a gotcha, make sure to give us the right permissions to read your thumbnail image. Otherwise, it won't appear. see the add flags method in this example. We've heard from developers that you really want a way to provide hooks back to your app from within the share sheet. You can now provide a limited number of chooser-target objects that will be shown ahead of sharing shortcuts and any chooser-targets loaded from chooser-target services on the phone, as shown in this image. You can also provide a limited number of intents that point to activities that will be shown ahead of any app suggestions. You can pull this off, as you might expect, with extra chooser targets and extra initial intents. It's really important to call out here that users like and use deep link targets and app suggestions. For every intent and chooser target you include, it reduces the number of suggestions available to your users. So please use this feature with care. Through user studies, we've learned that folks almost always think of the person and the app they want to share to before they ever hit the share button. To make it easier for users to find that app that they're looking for, we've alphabetized app share targets by app name. And important for you, we've changed the way that targets look. We will show your application icon as defined in the manifest and ignore any provided activity or intent filter icon. For app targets, we will show the application label very prominently. It's what we alphabetize by. And any activity or intent filter label, less so, as you can see in the example. This is all to help users quickly find your app. So please update your application icon and label so users understand what they're sharing to. Often, the application label alone is enough context for users. Finally, we wrap and shape app icons, just like Launcher. So please use adaptive icons if you aren't already to make your app icon look great. There's a ton of other things ShareSheet can do for you on Android Q, and you can find more info and developer documentation coming soon. Now over to Toki for notification actions.
OK, so in Android Q, the system can now generate suggested actions for your notification. This happens for messaging notifications. The type of notifications that the types of suggestions that the system now generates include text replies or deep links into apps. So if you have a messaging notification, for example, we would automatically just generate suggestions for this. We think this will help improve how users engage with your app's notifications. So for example, if a friend of mine texts me through your app and says, hey, let's meet at this address, then the system can generate suggestions such as, yeah, sure, or no, I can't make it, or it can give me a deep link to maps to see the address or navigate to that address. The way this works is the system takes the content of the notification, runs it through machine learning models, and tries to understand the content of that notification and what the user might like to do with this. And then it will pop those actions inside of your notification. Let's have a look at how you could, There's one other feature that you can enable with this. It's called tap to edit. Whenever the system generates a text reply and the user clicks the reply, what you could do is you can enable the fact that the system will allow the user to edit the notification before sending it. So for example, if I was responding to my friend and I clicked would love to, I could continue to edit the response before sending it and say, how about I bring my dog or something? Let's look at how you can make your apps play nice with this new feature. I'll show you how you can enable and disable this feature. And then I'll show you how you could generate your own custom suggestions. And then I'll show you how you could combine your custom suggestions with system-generated suggestions. Let's look at the code. All right, the first thing you want to think about is to remember that this applies automatically to message notifications. So if your notification is of type category message, then the system will automatically generate these suggestions. You could also make this happen for other types of notifications if you think this is applicable to them. The way to turn the feature on or off is, if you wanted to turn on deep links, the method you're really looking for is set allow system-generated contextual actions. You set it to true to enable deep links, and you set it to false if you don't want this. By default, the system turns this on. Now, for text replies, the method you're looking for is set allow generated replies. This was an API that we introduced in Android P. You set it to true, then the system will automatically generate text replies for your app. And you set it to false, it won't do that. And then for tap to edit, the method you're looking for is set edit choices before sending. You want to set this to auto. When you do this, your app will behave like every other app on the device. However, if you really want to give the user a chance to edit the response before they send it, then you want to set this to yes. If you want a one-click action, then you want to set this to no. Next slide. Cool. So, as I said, you could generate your own custom replies and pop them into notifications. The way you would do this is, the way the system really does this is it kind of runs the content of the notification through machine learning models. So you could train your own models. But if you need help to do this, you could use MLKit. MLKit now features this new API called Smart Reply. What you do is you take the text of your conversation, you pass it to Smart Reply to suggest, and then it will return the callback. It will return the response to your callback with the suggestions. You can then take those suggestions and set them in your notifications remote input by calling set choices on it. Whenever you set your own custom suggestions, what happens is the system will not generate suggestions for you anymore. The reason we do this is so that the system-generated suggestions don't conflict with your custom ones. But if you really want to combine these suggestions, you could do this. And the trick to doing this is to understand how the system really generates the suggestions. The system uses a system service called the text classifier. Text classifier now features this method called suggest conversation actions. And what you do is you take the content of the notification and you pass it through this API. The API then returns the suggestions for you. These suggestions include text suggestions and deep links into apps. I already showed you how you could set text replies to your notifications. But if you wanted to do it for actions, here's how to do it. You take the icon, the title, and the intent from the action that was returned by the text classifier, and you use that to build your notification. You also want to call set contextual, and you set that to true. This will enable the system to render your notification, your deep links, the same way the system renders this in notification actions. And that's really the summary of all of the things that you really need to know about to get your app to play nice with this new feature that we have in Android Q. Next up is Mady to talk about bubbles. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. So Bubbles is our new notification-based multitasking feature in Android. But before I talk about Bubbles, I want to talk a little bit about System Alert Window. So System Alert Window has existed in Android for a while, and lots of apps have done really cool things with it, even though that wasn't really the intention of this API to begin with. Also, unfortunately, apps have done some less cool things. So it's a bit of a security problem, and it was never meant to be a heavily used user-facing API, so it also has performance implications for the system. And Android as a whole is taking steps to limit apps' abilities to use this API. So, OK, this is where Bubbles comes in. Bubbles is going to be offered as a platform alternative to System Alert Window. So similar to how pip handles a lot of the media viewing use cases, Bubbles is here to handle the more interactive use cases. In Q, Bubbles will be a developer preview. You can find it in developer options, and you can start playing with the API and getting your apps built with it. So try Bubbles, give us feedback. It will become the preferred path over System Alert Window. In the beta builds, you'll see it turned on automatically, but it will be moving to developer options. OK, so the anatomy of a bubble. You have a collapsed state and an expanded state. The collapsed state has the ability to post an update out of it. It's represented as a shape with a little flyout. And then expanded state shows activity content. This supports multiple bubbles. If you've got more, they would show up in a little row. OK, how do you build a bubble? If you've ever sent an Android notification or if you've ever built an activity, you can build a bubble. It's very straightforward. First, you're configuring an activity to display in a bubble. Then you're building a bubble metadata object, attaching that to a notification, and sending the notification. So let's look at some code. Here we have our activity definition in the Android manifest. There are 3 things you need to have set on your activity for it to bubble. It needs to be embeddable, it needs to be document launch mode always, and it needs to be resizable. If your activity fails any of these checks, your notification won't bubble. It'll just show as a normal notification. To construct bubble metadata, this is a new API on notifications. You get the pending intent for that bubble activity. And then this is very basic. Like, all you need is an icon and an intent. The API has a couple of other flags that you can look at in the developer documentation. But at minimum, you need the icon and the activity. Then you attach this metadata object to your notification. So you build a notification as you normally would, and then you just do that one call, set bubble metadata on it, and then use notification manager to send the notification. Now, I might have mentioned that not everything gets to bubbles. So bubbles are meant for highly interactive use cases. They can be convenient, but they might be annoying if the user doesn't find them handy. They show up on screen. They take up screen real estate. They want your attention. So right now, we're focusing on messaging, calling, and user-initiated use cases. If your notification doesn't fulfill these requirements, it won't display as a bubble. It'll just show as a normal notification would. So the nitty-gritty of this. If you are messaging, you'll want to use message style, and you'll want to have an inline reply action attached to the notification. If you're a phone call, you'll want to be category call. You'll want to have a person and a foreground service. And then the user-initiated use case, we're kind of covering when your app is in the foreground. So when your app is in front of the user, you can send any kind of notification as a bubble, and that'll appear. Once the app goes out of the foreground, that bubble will remain on screen, and you can continue to send updates to it. OK, so just to confirm, did that thing I send, did it bubble? You can query Notification Manager. Whenever something is bubbled, or when it's an active notification, it'll appear in Get Active Notifications. Then you just can check the flags of it. This code gives a little bit of a sense of it. Find the notification that was supposed to bubble. Check if the flag for flag bubble is enabled. Then you'll know. OK, so that's all we've got. Thank you for coming to listen about sharing improvements, notification improvements, and bubbles and multitasking. We'll be heading over to the Android sandbox if you've got questions for us. So please come find us, and thanks for listening today.